Welcome, everybody. And you made a good choice choosing this session. So I'm very happy to be able to introduce the next speaker in the next session. And I'm curious, is there anybody from the social team who does the Twitter back channel in this session? Not yet? No, okay.
Maybe I should send her a tweet.
Yeah, it's to Kate. Kate would be here, so okay, we'll check, we'll see. Let's try to solve it the social way. Huh? I think she will jump in later. So good afternoon. Welcome to this session. My name is Driesen. I'm the Learning Innovation Leader at aNewSpring. It's a blended learning platform, and I'm happy to introduce you to Isabel de Clercq. And Isabel and me, we have a few things in common. First thing is that we both have family roots in Belgium. I live in the Netherlands now, she still lives in Belgium. The second one is that we both use the same job title, which is trend catcher. She in Belgium, I in the Netherlands. And the third one, I guess that's the most obvious one, is that we both have this beautiful curly hair. Okay. Good. Isabel, please join me up front if you're ready.
I just sent a mail, not a mail, a tweet to Kate, so I hope she will be here soon.
Yeah. Isabel works for Wolters Kluwer, and she has always been active and is passionate about the social domain. Ah, there is Kate. Welcome, Kate. We were waiting for you. And it's important because Kate is the one who is heading the team of the social team, who report from each session on the Twitter back channel. And I think that's an amazing initiative. And for that, please give a big applause so that all the other members of that team in the other rooms can also hear it. Please, an applause for the social team. Okay, so Isabel works for Wolters Kluwer, and she just wrote this really nice book. There's a card on the table if you want to have more information about it. The book is called Social Technologies in Business, Connect, Share and Lead. And I think that very much sums up what Isabel really likes to do. So give her a big round of applause and we'll get started. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ger, for this nice introduction. My husband turned 50 last year. Are there any men in the room who turned 50 last year? Yeah. No, you're not. Well, it seems that for men, 50 is a rather difficult age, is it? Not at all. You didn't do like any strange things? No. What do people say about men who turn 50? What do they do?
Midlife crisis.
Yes, they have a crisis, a midlife crisis. And what else do they do? What kind of actions do they take? Do you know that?
Buy a motorbike.
They buy a motorbike. Exactly. That's exactly what my husband did. And well, in fact, turning 50 was just an excuse to buy a motorcycle. And he's very proud of it. And in fact, this was just the first one, because after 1 year, there was another one, etc., etc. And so this was his first motorcycle. And as you can see, for those who like motorcycles, are there any men in the room who like motorcycles? This is a BMW, very beautiful machine. And when he goes to Antwerp, it's where we live, then sometimes just people really look at this BMW and they ask him for questions. He's really proud about that. Another thing that sometimes happens with men who turn 50 is that they lose their job. And so my husband, he used to work for a French bank. It's called BNP Paribas Fortis. And you can work in Brussels or in Paris. And so he was working in Paris. And one day, his boss, a girl, a rather young girl from Paris, she said, well, Patrick, we really want to thank you for all the work that you have been doing for the bank, but unfortunately, there is a reorganization of the department, and well, thank you for all the work that you have been done, but your job has been made redundant. So there he was, you know, with his motorcycle, just without a job. And he was really panicking, and he said, oh my God, what do I have to do? How can I make clear to other people what I'm capable of doing and what is my expertise and my projects? What do I have to do? And then I asked him, did you leave any traces? And he was, in fact, a bit angry with me, and he said, well, of course I left a lot of traces, because I worked for Fortis Lease. It used to be a Belgian organization, and now it's a European one. Of course I left some traces. And I said, but what about your network? And then he said, well, I used to work for that guy, and he was famous, but then he left the bank. And then I worked for that other guy, but he also left the bank. In fact, what I was trying to tell him, that it is very important, and in fact, that's one of the most important messages that I would like to give you, not just as HR professionals, but as individuals, that it is very important to leave a digital footprint. Because leaving a digital footprint makes you less vulnerable. It makes you less dependent upon just one manager who will maybe leave your organization. It makes you less dependent upon just one organization. It is very important. So it is important to leave a digital footprint. Leaving a digital footprint is also the best way to build up a network that you need in order to grow as a professional, a network that you need the day that maybe you have to find another job. I started myself leaving a digital footprint in 2011 when Twitter arrived in my life. Whom of you is very active on Twitter? Okay. And then I hope you want to tweet also about this session, so, but not really a lot of people in this room. And a trainer that was working for my company, and he was British, he said, Isabel, I will learn you how to use Twitter, and you will see this will like be a whole new world opening up for you. And I have to say that I was rather skeptical, you know, like these men who say there will come a new world. You know, I have the internet, I have my colleagues, so what could be so important and changing about Twitter? Well, against my expectations and despite my disbelief, I found myself admitting that Dan Steer, this British guy, he was just absolutely right. Twitter was changing my life, and I can say that. In fact, without Twitter, I would not have been able to write this book, and I would not have been here, and I'm very proud of being here talking to you, sharing my knowledge with you. What is so special about Twitter? Twitter allowed me to connect very easily with other people who are far more intelligent than I am, for example, a Finnish professor or other academic people in the world. So it is very easy, and it's just for free, all this information that is passing by, and you are learning a lot. And so I really felt that I was growing as a professional. A second thing that happened is that I was able to show my work and to show my expertise. So I was working out loud and leaving traces on Twitter, on social media. So in fact, I was able to raise my voice, to speak up. So I didn't have to feel stuck anymore between the walls of my job description. I could speak up, I had my voice. And then I started to be like really intrigued about social media, and there was this connecting and sharing and leading, the self-leadership. I really got intrigued by that. And in fact, it became also the subtitle of my book. First, you connect with other people. You start learning from them. Then you start sharing your work yourself. And all this leads to leadership. In fact, that is another message that I would like to give to you. According to me, there is this really strong link between knowledge sharing and self-leadership. And I'm going to explain you why. So knowledge sharing and self-leadership are intertwined. That's an important message I want to give you today, and I will explain why. What is knowledge sharing, or what are the different steps of knowledge sharing? You have 5 of them, and the first one is it starts with reflecting. It starts with reflecting upon what you have learned and what you would like to share with other people. But of course, reflecting upon what you have learned, it leads to reflecting upon the way you use your time. And it leads to reflecting upon the added value that you bring to your organization. So by sharing my knowledge, I started to ask myself a lot of questions about, did I use my time well? And did I do the right times? And in fact, what is the added value of myself to my organization? And in fact, what is the added value of my organization to the world? So by the fact you take this time for reflection, it's a first step to self-leadership. That's one thing. Then, of course, I have these thoughts in my head. But if you are active on social, then you have to translate your thoughts into language. And of course, on Twitter, you have video, you have text, you have images, and you can choose, in fact, the language that you prefer. But by translating your thoughts into language, in fact, it crystallizes your ideas. And so ideas are created in the act of writing. Ideas emerge when you translate them into knowledge, into written things or spoken things. So that's the second reason why there is this link between knowledge sharing and self-leadership. And then, of course, you have step number 4, it's building up a network. And that is another message that I would like to give to you. There is a very clear link between being proactive and building up a network. I have built up a network, and in fact it means that I decide myself from whom I want to learn. And it did not used to be like that in the past, because in the past it was my manager who decided from whom I was going to learn. Now I decided myself, because I found these people, these inspiring and intelligent people in my network myself. The second thing is that if you build up a network and if you build up this trust with these other people, then you are going to ask for feedback proactively. Before, I was somebody who was just, like every other employee, waiting for feedback from my manager. And now because I have all these people in my network, I ask for feedback to them proactively. For example, if I have to prepare a presentation, and if there is in the room somebody whom I know, then otherwise, afterwards, I will always ask for feedback. Or sometimes when I have to write a blog, when it's almost finished, I email it to one of the people in my network and I ask this person for feedback. And so in this way, I'm very proactive and I grow as a professional. And in fact, it's all for free. So it's about self-leadership. And then a third reason why this network is so important is people say that they are submerged by all the information that is passing by. But because of the fact I have this network, I know who are the most interesting people on Twitter, for example. So for me, it is enough to follow like 5 people every day, and then I know I have all the information I need. So what I also want to say is that the network is like a fishing net, and so it catches all the information that is relevant for you. So building up a network is all about proactivity. I was so happy growing as a professional by social media that I just changed my LinkedIn profile. And what I have put on my LinkedIn profile had nothing to do with my job description that I had at Wolters Kluwer. And just like Ger, I do not know who picked whose idea. I don't remember Ger. It's social, yeah. I decided to be not just a trend watcher, but I want to catch trends. So I became a trend catcher, a sparkle architect, and a keynote speaker. And then afterwards, I became an author. But I'm just not talking about myself. I just want to say that social media gives you as an individual a voice. And then you start growing. And then, in fact, you define your role yourself. You are not dependent completely upon your organization. And this is, in fact, who I want to be. I want to be an evangelizer, and I want to inspire individuals and organizations to use the power of social technologies. About the word social technologies, there's sometimes some confusion. At the left, you see Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and in general, when we refer to those, we use the word social media. When we refer to the other ones, we use the word social technologies. And so these are the technologies that are used to promote knowledge sharing within organizations. And I have to say, of course, you have the Microsoft tools like Microsoft and Teams. And then Slack is very famous too. IBM Connections has a lot of success in France and in Germany. And then, of course, you have Jive, as it is used, for example, also within the European Commission. So these are some examples of social technologies. So the technologies that organizations use to promote knowledge sharing within organizations. My own organization, Wolters Kluwer, introduced Yammer, so it's kind of a Facebook kind of thing within the organization in 2012. And there I saw some really interesting things happening because I saw that people from different departments, different teams, different business units, they started to connect because they share their knowledge with each other. And then I had this like crazy but very simple idea. I saw, and this is also one of my important messages, that social technologies, it is very simple, but social technologies break down barriers that cost us a lot of money within organizations. And what are these barriers within organizations? Well, first of all, you have barriers between teams. When you have barriers between teams, it means that expertise and lessons learned are not shared. And so it means that teams are reinventing the wheel time over time, so we are losing precious time. And of course, if you have social technologies, then people are connected and then they can share lessons learned. You have more productivity, efficiency, etc. Another barrier that you have is not the barrier between teams, but it's the barrier between the hierarchical layers. That costs us a lot of money because information is cascaded down and it goes very slowly. We don't need slowness in our organizations. We need speed and we need agility. So I saw in my own organization that when you connect all these people by social technologies, you have more efficiency, more productivity, an increased innovative capability. You have more agile learners because people are nurtured by ideas that come from other teams and other business units. And it's the best antidote you can think about against incestuous thinking. There has been done some research by McKinsey. In fact, since 2005, McKinsey has been analyzing the power of social technologies from 2005, and so this is also proved with scientific research. So social technologies is not just about Facebook, it's not just about women talking about their cats and their children. Social is a strong business driver, and so that's also one of the most important messages I would like to give you today. In 2013, I created a Yammer community. It's called The Future of Work, and we started in Antwerp, where I live, somewhere in a basement in a restaurant, and we were just 10 of them. And now we are 700. And so each week I get requests from people who want to join and so who want to share their knowledge about the future of work. And in fact, what I have learned over there is that there was some other kind of value creation that emerged. Because, you know, we always talk about co-creation with customers, that we have to see our customers as peers. But in fact, all of this is enabled by social technologies. I can really ask questions to my customers who are in my Yammer community, and it's not difficult to develop things with them. It is really about co-creation, getting together. So this is another advantage of social technologies. They bring you closer to your customer. I told you I want to be an evangelizer, and I had been inspiring a lot of individuals, explaining them that there is a link between knowledge sharing and self-leadership. And I thought, well, Isabel, this is not enough. You also have to convince executives, and you have to change and inspire organizations. So one day, I was in a room with a lot of executives, and we were talking about the future of organizations. And I said, well, it's rather clear the future of organizations is social, of course. And then there was this big silence in the room. And you know what happened? They just all started to laugh. And then I said, like, oh my God. And then I realized, well, I'm still convinced of the fact that the future of organizations is social. But then I realized that I had to go and look for concrete examples of organizations who use social technologies who take social technologies very serious. And so I started to look for them, and I found them. And for example, you have very big organizations like ENGIE. You have a lot of organizations in Germany, like Audi, Siemens, Robert Bosch, Deutsche Messe, Continental, Daimler, for example, and Philips. What is intriguing me is that, you know, all the logos that you see at the right side, they are all in Germany, and I don't understand why it is. But it started somewhere at Robert Bosch, where there is this girl, Katharina Krenz, who is promoting knowledge sharing within the company. And now you even have executives of Robert Bosch posting on LinkedIn that knowledge sharing leads to a very strong organization. It's really, in Belgium, it's just not possible. So for example, this is an executive from Robert Bosch, and he was with an interview on LinkedIn, and he said, working in networks is a key skill of all of us. There is not one executive in Belgium that would say that. Isn't that great? So an executive talking about a soft skill like working in networks and sharing knowledge. Another example is this, well, she's not an executive, but she was working within Siemens. They use as technology social cost. And she said, well, we have been working on social collaboration since 2012. So another big company, and it all started in Germany. I repeat, I cannot explain why. Another example is Daimler. I was invited by Daimler in November 2017. And you know, when you promote social technologies, it's very important that you have ambassadors. And so they had chosen 300 ambassadors worldwide. 200 of them were German, and the other 100 came over the world. They all came to Stuttgart in order to talk about social collaboration and knowledge sharing. And on stage were also executives who said that social collaboration and knowledge sharing is crucial to survive digital transformation. So this is also something that I see, this link between digital transformation and social collaboration. So another example is Daimler. And for example, this is Volkmar Tenner. He is Robert Bosch CEO. And I find this really nice word in an interview with him just 1 month ago on LinkedIn. And he speaks about, so he's CEO, he's not a learning and development person. He speaks about learn agility. Isn't that a beautiful word? It's about learning, learn agility. And so he says, the ability to generate knowledge quickly and efficiently across boundaries and then sharing it makes our organization very strong. I really like this quote by Robert Bosch, CEO. So that was the first part of my presentation. I've been talking about the advantages of social technologies for individuals. It leads to more self-leadership. And I have been talking about the advantages for the organization. It's a business driver, and I have given you like concrete examples of organizations who take social technologies very serious. And now it's up to you. I can be very passionate about social collaboration and knowledge sharing, but it is rather difficult to implement and to make it a success because there are a lot of barriers to knowledge sharing. So I would like you to take like 3 or 5 minutes to talk with the people around the table and to list up some barriers against knowledge sharing. Yeah, 3 minutes. Off you go. So I would like to invite somebody here, and then I would like to hear what kind of resistances you see against knowledge sharing. Who would like to say something? You all want to, I know that. Just raise your hand. Nobody wants to speak. Yes, okay. No, please come here. Please come here.
Oh, that wasn't even good.
I didn't say that. Okay, give an applause to this man. Oh, please come here. First, I would like you to introduce yourself to the audience.
Okay, Greg Nottage from Fitch Learning, financial services training firm. We thought that the main issue would be things like vulnerability, so people actually feeling vulnerable in an organisation to share their knowledge, and also like the organisational change required, that it needs buy-in from the top down to the Bosch case study, that you need people to set the tone.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the organizational barrier, the culture of the organization, command and control is one of the most important barriers against knowledge sharing. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, another one. Okay, please come here. Yes, and another applause. Yeah, why not? Could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Graham Hill. I work in the operations. Sorry, I'm Graham Hill. I work at BP as part of the OMS design team. On our table, we covered the points that you've covered there. One of the things that came up was trust and culture, and I think that hit different people in different ways. So it was the leadership and management trusting that the information was correct, but in my particular scenario, we have Yammer, but people are often reluctant to put pen to paper or type their views and opinions, one because it might be deemed as wrong by other people in the business, but also in a high-risk environment, putting the wrong thing can have serious consequences, so people are very, very tentative about using some of the social media solutions.
Okay, thank you for mentioning the word trust. When it comes to knowledge sharing and social collaboration, there's always one word that comes up, and it's about trust and then how to build trust, etc. Thank you very much. Okay, another person who would like to speak? Okay.
I won't come to you.
No, you don't. Okay, I've not seen that. Okay, could you introduce yourself?
I've got an excuse. I've got wheels.
Very good excuse.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Daly. I work for Diabetes UK. We had an interesting discussion on this table that actually we have social media overload. We've got email. We've got Yammer. We cited about 6 or 7 WhatsApp that we could use, and actually that creates 2 problems. One, who do you trust and where do you go for the information? But also, do people have the will to use it? We've had Yammer in our organisation 2 years. No bugger uses it.
Yeah. And then, of course, I would like to ask a lot of questions why nobody uses it. And then in the third part of this presentation, thank you, I will explain how to get started and what can go wrong. So I hope that I can give some explanations about why it did not work. But in a lot of organizations, you know, it's just implemented, not even implemented, it is given as a tool by IT and then it dies. Okay. Somebody else? Another resistance against, another barrier against knowledge sharing. Yeah, please come here. Thank you, and please introduce yourself.
My name is Ronald Witjes. I'm 62 years of age. I just sold my motorbike.
And what is your partner thinking about that?
She requested me to do so.
Really? She wants to get rid of you. I think that's clear.
No.
Yeah, no.
We're a Dutch-based company, 25 consultants. We use Slack as a communication means. It works, but it's just communicating. And the point for me is, when does communication turn into learning?
Yeah.
That's one, because we used a lot of, we tried Twitter, but we stopped it because, in my opinion, what you put in it, it doesn't mean you get much back. So you can Twitter all day long, but what's the use of it? You get lots of followers, so what? So when does learning with Twitter really starts? That's our question. And I'm not against it, but it's in terms of input-output, I'm not sure yet. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have to say that Slack is really famous also in Belgium. And I don't know why, but I still prefer Yammer, maybe because I'm a bit older and younger people, they prefer Slack. But I find Slack more like pushing information, chatting, instead of really going into dialogue. But I cannot explain why. So it's more like pushing. But even then, and I will come back to that at the end of the presentation, just imagine the power of this tool while people are sharing their knowledge, because malcommunication, when they share their knowledge, even if you have like 1% of people sharing their knowledge, it means that 99% are learning. But then it should not be just communication, it should be knowledge sharing. And knowledge sharing is reflecting about what you know and translating it into a concise language that does not add noise on the internet. And I'm convinced that that is a new skill it makes part of digital literacy, and that you have to give people time to learn it. And that's why these Christmas holidays, I started developing a learning track. It's called Connect, Share, Leads, and so I help people to share their knowledge online. It's like new language. We all had to learn to write emails. We had to learn to give presentations, and now we have to learn to share our knowledge in online communities. But it's okay. Thank you very much for your input. My time is just up until 3, so I have to go on. About barriers against knowledge sharing. So we had lack of trust, organizational structures, command and control. Maybe there's too much noise. That's what we heard. This is one of the barriers against knowledge sharing, and I hear it time over time. Individuals are not aware anymore of the facts that they really have a lot of knowledge that is still interesting to other people. And people say, but Isabel, what I know, is that really interesting enough to share? And Jane Bozard, she's an interesting American learning and development professional, Jane Bozard with TH, and she has written a book, Show Your Work, and that was a great inspiration for me. And there's somewhere she says in the book, if that's what you are doing is not interesting enough to share, then why the hell are you doing it? And I know it's a bit like subversive, but it is true. I'm 50 now, and it means that I have been learning like 30 years. And of course, my expertise is interesting, for example, for younger people or for other people who work in the same domain as I do. So yes, we should all be proud of ourselves, of the knowledge that is in our head. But this is an important barrier. A second barrier is the lousy reputation of social media. It's this one. You know, social media is for those who want to show off, who want to say what they are doing. And I say, no, it's the opposite. It's about generous people. And by sharing their knowledge, they want to contribute to their communities. No, it's not about showing up. And of course, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on LinkedIn, you have people who show off. People who show off, they only share what they are doing, and they are never interacting with other people. But online leadership is about sharing what you have, sharing your knowledge and sharing other people's knowledge and interacting with other people. And then another resistance against knowledge sharing is, of course, this one. This is a quote. It's in German from Deutsche Telekom, so another organization in Germany. And it is a quote that they heard in a company, and it comes from a middle manager. And the middle manager says, those who are blogging or those who are active on social media, they have nothing to do. They have too much time. And of course, this comes from the old way of thinking, a dichotomy in organizations between those who think and those who execute. Those who execute are not supposed to have knowledge in their head that we could share. You know? So it's this old dichotomy, and I still even feel it in my own organization. And now, of course, if we promote knowledge sharing, then it means that everybody has the right and the opportunity to share her expertise. So this is another barrier against knowledge sharing. And then, yeah, this is like the old image of managers and employees. So sometimes managers treat their employees like children. I know children, they have to be punished. And sometimes they have to be rewarded. But children are not those people who are able to share their knowledge. So this is about paternalistic leadership. If you have an organization with a lot of paternalistic leadership, you can implement Yammer, you can implement whatever, Jive or Slack. It will not work because the structure is in it. It is against knowledge sharing because children do not share their knowledge or they are not worth sharing it. And then, of course, you have the image of Superman. It's the middle manager. The middle manager used to be Superman because he knew the answers to all the questions. And he decided which kind of training the team members could follow. And he decided which information could be cascaded down to the other layers, you know. And now we have social technologies. People build their own networks. They decide themselves from whom they want to learn. They ask proactively feedback to other people, not just through the managers. And they find all the information on social. In fact, what I want to say is that the implementation of social technologies is really crucial for the survival of organizations, but I also think it is really subversive. And it's another way of working, it's another way of learning, and we are simply not used to it. The middle manager in social technologies is just not a middle manager anymore. He's not Superman anymore. He's just a peer amongst other peers within a community. And for a lot of middle managers, this is really difficult because we are taking away, social technologies are taking away their status symbols and they lose a lot of their old power. So social technologies, like it's about a new way of working. It's about transparency. It's about vulnerability. It's about time for reflection for everybody. So it is rather difficult to implement. Okay, and then now the third part. How to implement social technologies. I have been comparing different cases, the implementation of social at ANZ, at KBC, at ANGI, in the German organizations. And I was looking for the building blocks, the key success factors that always came back, that made the implementation of social a success. And the first one is this one. I was talking to Willem van Twembeke. He used to be the CEO of GDF Suez Energy International. And I told him, well, Willem, you are an engineer, you like numbers and etc. And how can you be so in favor of knowledge sharing? And he said, well, Isabel, my engineers, they are all over the world. And they have like specific expertise. And of course, if there is an engineer in Bahrain who has a certain problem, maybe another engineer in Canada already has solved this problem. I do not want this guy from Bahrain to reinvent the wheel time over time. I want knowledge to be shared really rapidly. It's all about efficiency and productivity. And so he said, for me, the exchange of knowledge is really crucial to the survival of my organization because, you know, this specific expertise is all around the world and they have to share their knowledge. So the first building block is there has to be a strategic rationale. There should be a clear link between social, people working together, and the realization of a strategic objective. And now the realization of a strategic objective in general requires that people from different departments are working together, and then social helps to collaborate. If you don't have the strategic rationale, sometimes then, well, it is more difficult to implement social technologies. The second one, I helped a Belgian organization to implement social, and this link between the realization of a strategic objective and social was somewhere in the head of the executives. And they said, yeah, we do agree, and we see what you mean. But they did not give this message explicitly to the organization. And then, of course, nobody knows about it. And then for people, it is not safe to share their knowledge. So it did not work out to be a success. So the executives should say explicitly that social collaboration is very important, like that woman at Daimler, the executives that said to all these ambassadors, yes, I am on Jive, yes, I have created a profile, yes, I will share my knowledge. And I know it will be difficult, but it is crucial for the survival of my organization. If you talk to the people from ANGI, they will say this is the most important building block. It means that executives should lead by example. It means that they should share their knowledge themselves on social technologies. And for these executives who used to show themselves as Superman and very powerful people, it is very difficult to share their knowledge on social, because then, of course, you show your vulnerable self. Then it's about vulnerability. But this is really important. It's another building block. And so, for example, at ANGI, they have given these executives private sessions to help them to be on social. Because being social is not like asking your secretary or assistant to write your messages. It's not authentic. Another building block is, sometimes people tell me, well, Isabel, we are not a networked organization. We are an hierarchical organization, like most of the organizations are. So it's not possible to implement social. And then I say, all our organizations are hierarchical. What you need It's just this eagerness, this willingness to evolve from an hierarchical organization to an organization where hierarchy is supplemented by networks. Because sometimes people say, you are against hierarchy. I'm not against hierarchy, not at all. I just say that you need a formal hierarchy, but that it has to be supplemented by communities and by networks. A fifth building block is that you need training. I was in another Belgian company and they said, no, we are not going to do training. Well, we are going to do a bit of e-learning because Isabel, it's about digital skills, it's about digital literacy, so we will do only digital training. And I say, it's not going to work. When you talk with the people at Robert Bosch, they say we provided all kinds of trainings, just manuals, classical trainings, e-learnings, whatever. But it is a new skill. Sharing your knowledge online is a new skill and people need time to learn it. Then you also need a kind of a charter. And for example, at Engie, they have like a simple 2-pager. In Orange, for example, in France, they have like 50 pages, and it focuses on the don'ts and not on the do's. And at Engie, for example, they have a charter 2-page, and it is stimulated by, but it is in fact written also by the executives. And it's clearly stated what is the right behavior. So this is also something that you really need. And then a last building block that I see coming back all over again is the importance of community managers. And for example, at Robert Bosch, they even have developed a training for people who want to be a community manager. So this is also very important. And then in fact, for you to get started, so I'm always telling that sharing your knowledge is a new skill and that you have to learn it. And I want to share some of my knowledge with you now. This is a man that I have met on LinkedIn. And for me, he's really inspiring me because he's much more intelligent than I am. So because of social, I have grown as a professional. And his name is Jan van Oudendijken. And we had never met before up until 3 years ago. I was here at the Conference of Learning Technologies in London as a participant. And after the conference, we went to drink together a cup of tea in the Mandarin Oriental because people told me that the Mandarin Oriental is like a great hotel. So we met in the Mandarin Oriental 3 years ago. And then I said to Jan, just what you said. Well, Jan, just 1% of people in online communities, they are posting. So it means that it's always the same person, And then he said, but just imagine the power of all the other people just learning from this guy. And then we started to talk about, and this is something that I really would like to share with you, different levels of participation in online knowledge flows. So I like this comparison between knowledge and water, because knowledge is like water and it cannot be stopped at the boundaries of a team, of the boundaries of an organization. And so then people say, yeah, but for me it's very difficult to write a blog post. And then I say, you don't have to write blog posts from the first day. What you first do is that you start to fish. See that? You start to fish in the water that is passing by. And you will learn a lot. But then, of course, it is important to do this in a very conscious way. You have to find the right people, and you have to find the right topics that you want to follow. And you really have to find the right people, because there are some people just making a lot of noise on social. And then people tell to me, but how do I know which kind of topics do I have to follow? And I say, well, this is all about proactivity and self-leadership. And then the first question I ask them is, what kind of knowledge do you need? What kind of skills do you need in order to stay relevant in your organization? And then they say, oh, this is like a question I've never asked myself. And if you know the question to that answer, you can go online in a very conscious way. But you really choose the topics, and you really choose the people that you want to follow. So this is about consuming. It is rather easy, but you have to do it in a very conscious way. And then the next step is that you start feeding the social technologies. It's just not fishing, but you start feeding. And then you have 2 stages, 2 phases. You can contribute and you can create. So this is what I call the 3C model. First you start consuming, and then you start contributing, and then creating. Contributing means that you will share other people's posts, and that you add some information, you add sense, you summarize it, or you say, I do not agree with paragraph number 2. That is contributing. And the third one is then you start creating yourself, you start writing, you start recording podcasts, videos, etc. And so I have been developing a learning track with people to help them to consume, to contribute, and to create in a very conscious way. So I hope that this can help you. So in fact, my most important messages for today were the following. Social technologies have a lot of advantages. The first advantage is for the individuals, because there is a link between knowledge sharing and some self-leadership. Then we saw that social technologies are a great advantage for organizations, because they give more productivity, efficiency, more innovative capability, etc. And we saw examples of concrete organizations. The second part was the resistances against social. We have the lousy reputation of social. We have people who think that their knowledge is not just enough to be shared. And then we have the organizational structure and the lack of trust. And then we saw how to get started. So we saw some critical success factors, and then I gave you just this to get started. And in fact, this is all the information that I wanted to give to you. And now I would like to give you some more time to listen to you and to, so that you can ask me some questions. Critical questions. Or maybe we start with an easier one.
No, let's start with giving you a big round of applause.
Thank you, Isabel. Thank you.
Great timing. There's some time left to ask some questions or have some discussion. So, and it's all about social. So let's apply what we just learned, I guess.
Yeah.
What's the easy one?
Yeah, the easy one is maybe give me one insight or one idea that you agree with. So what did you hear in my presentation that you say, that's really a thing that is interesting and I would like to apply that? So what did you agree with? And maybe, yes, over there's somebody who would like to speak.
That must be fast, yes.
Hi, my name is Nadia. I work for a big law firm, and slightly difficult to change, especially as lawyers are always very busy. But what I really liked is that you can learn these social knowledge sharing skills. That's really, really encouraging, because people will be frightened of sharing.
It's trainable, and I think that learning and development people can play an important role in it. This morning, I was attending a session, so thank you, first of all. I was attending a session, and I heard a lot of HR people complaining about the fact that they are somewhere, at the side. You have tea and you have lemon on the side. You have the business and you have learning and development on the side. And we're always complaining like, well, what can we do to really play a crucial role for the organization? And I think, in this case, learning and working, they are not separate anymore. They are finally coming together. So getting the work done in environments like Jive and Yammer is a great thing, because learning and working come together. And HR can play a crucial role by helping implementing social technologies and setting up trainings and development tracks for people to help them share their knowledge. So it's, I think, a huge opportunity for learning and development.
Okay, Isabel, we have a special situation now, because we have the queen of the back channel over here, and we have the king of the back channel over
there. An applause for David, yeah.
So, David, what has sharing, and you did a lot, brought you? I would love if you share that with the audience.
What has sharing brought me? How much time do you have? I mean, sharing has transformed my life in many different ways. It has transformed my career. It has transformed the way that I look at the programs that I've supported. When you start to live the sharing, you start to see the opportunities that exist in the work that we do very differently, and that is a very powerful light bulb moment. It's the best way I could summarize it.
He became a director of the e-learning guild by sharing. And one part of it, of course, he has a lot more talents, but
In fact, what David said records me of what this Dan Steer, my colleague, said, this British guy. He said, when you will use Twitter, you will, well, your life will change. And you just said exactly the same. You talk about transformative power of social. First, I was laughing with him, and then now I'm here evangelizing the power of social. So, yeah.
Okay.
So
Who
another
else?
thing that you agree with.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Gemma from Aviva. One thing that really resonated with me was the examples of the leaders who were saying this is an actual business driver. This isn't something small that can pass us by. This is fundamental to growth and fundamental to us surviving as a business. So that for me is something that we're still working on, but really resonated, and is something I'll take away as something to work on, definitely.
And it's like a no-brainer that you need the support of the executives. And in Robert Bosch, well, they have it. And for example, in KBC, there it was a bit different because it started as a grassroots movement, but now even executives are on it. So sometimes it goes bottom up. But you really need, you really need the support of the executives. And that, for example, was also the case at Angie, this guy who's really an evangelizer of knowledge sharing. And people, sometimes his colleagues, just didn't understand what he was talking about. So I also think that it is just emerging, and it is really a changed program that you will have to roll out, and it takes some time. Yeah.
okay. Yes, gentleman over there.
I was wondering if you could talk about what some of the skills and competencies are that we should look for in community managers.
Yeah, it is. Well, I have to say that, of course, community management is not my specialty. I know that, for example, Rachel Happe, she's at Twitter from the Community Roundtable, is a very good one. She's in Canada. And but last week I was in Milan speaking for the European Commission, and all the people in the room were community managers, and I had made one slide about community management, and I am a community manager myself, and I have to admit that I do it rather following my intuition. And then I thought, okay, Isabel, but you always talk about sharing your knowledge, so you have to make this knowledge explicit. So what is it about? What is it, community management? Community management is doing things with your heart and with your head. Okay. With your heart, it means that you really have to connect people. For example, if there is a question passing by and you know that person X knows the answer to that question, I always ping that person. Sometimes I also bring people physically together whom I know they will learn from each other. I also bring people together in physical events so that we can develop things together. So it's not just about online, it's also about offline. I also ask them to be explicit about the added value of the company, and then I make a blog post out of it. And now with this blog post, I attract other people. It's about listening really what is going on, because you know a community is like an organic kind of thing. And sometimes it is a living thing, and there comes another human being out of it. And there's sometimes a part that is split, and then you start a new community. But it's organic. You have to listen. What is also important is that you have to make the strategic value of the community explicit for the outside world, because otherwise it's too inside looking. And I think that the specialist in community management is Etienne Wenger. Do you know him? He has been writing books about communities of practice since ever, and he's really good in expliciting this knowledge. But there was this one sentence that I read in a book of his like 1 month ago, and he said, you do things with your heart, you connect people, you listen to people, and you do things with the head. You explicit the value, you communicate about the value to people outside the community, etc. Yeah, but if you Wenger and then communities of practice, you will find his work. And it's really fascinating. And I think Diane Hinchcliffe, do you know him? I will write down his name. He's my guru. I found him on Twitter, and he says, in fact, the future of organizations is about community management. Community managers will play a crucial role. So that is really something interesting to follow. But I will write down some names for you. Can you read what is on the? Yeah. Okay. So you have.
Okay. In the meantime, any
So
more?
Wenger is the specialist in communities of practice. And you really have to follow this guy. He is on Twitter, Diane Hinchcliffe. He has more than 10,000 or 20,000 followers. He's really a great guy. Okay. So doing things with the heart and with the head. Yeah.
You can do that. Sure. Who else? Yeah.
Over this morning, some of the presentations, we've talked about historically learning's been just in case and it's moving to more just in time. And somebody this morning also used the quote, just enough. When we're talking about social media, we're talking about people giving their knowledge and sharing their knowledge, but not necessarily just in time and not necessarily if lots of people are sharing just enough. That then poses a question, is it most useful when people are posing a question?
That's a very
so
good
they're
question.
inviting the question in, but that then requires trust that people won't hold them accountable to having to ask the question, as it were.
Yes, there is a lot in your question. The first element, really interesting, is people need information in time and just enough. And there, of course, social technologies is good in this dynamic of asking a question. Because then if you are seen as a trustful person who also contributes to the community, then people will be eager to help you and to give you answer to their questions. But it means that first you have to give, and then you will get things back. The other thing that you say, or that maybe I hear, is that when people are not just asking questions, but just, sharing their knowledge, it might get noisy. And I do not know really the solution to that problem, but I think what helps is that you have different communities, so you're not going to post every message in every community. No, you have different topics in different communities. That's one thing. So you have to be careful, very conscious about what message will I post in which community. And people have to learn that. Secondly, they have to learn, I repeat it, to share their knowledge in a very concise way. That's a new skill. It's about microblogging. That's why I like Twitter. And that's why I don't like that you can go now to 280 characters. And the other thing is that you have to use hashtags, so that, and then for example, in SharePoint, you can say, I only want to follow this kind of hashtag or another kind of hashtag. But it means a heightened self-consciousness about the topics that you want to follow. And I think that artificial intelligence might help us, because then maybe artificial intelligence will suggest me people that I have to follow according to my profile and my previous messages. But yeah, very interesting question. So different dynamics, asking questions, sharing knowledge, but people have to learn it. But then there was a second element in your question, and now I forgot. At the end, you added something else.
So where I was coming from was, in order to feel comfortable asking questions in an open forum, there's got to be trust that it's so.
Yeah, I think that executives play, sorry for interrupting you, executives play a crucial role. If the executive is on the online tool, and if the executive sometimes makes mistakes and shows himself as a vulnerable person, then other people know it's okay to make mistakes. And then they will be willing to ask questions. But there was one slide that I skipped, and it's from the CEO of Microsoft, and he said, we have to go from a know-it-all culture to a learn-it-all culture. And so before, work used to be about the execution of repetitive tasks, and now work is more and more about interaction with other people, solving new problems. Before, when I was working at the University of Ghent, I was not supposed to make mistakes because I was always doing the same. Writing manuals for French and Spanish. But now I have to do new things. And of course, in the new world, you have to be allowed to make mistakes. But I also understand that before we were not allowed to make mistakes because it was always about the same. So executives play a crucial role, and middle managers too. Because if you have middle managers, like at Deutsche Bank, the one that I gave in German, then you really have a problem. If you say, well, if you are blogging, if you are in these online communities, then it means that you are just losing time. Then you really have a problem. I also saw it within my company at Wolters Kluwer, and so we had to give special training to the middle managers. Okay, yeah, but building trust is an important one. Yeah.
Okay, I think it's about time.
Okay.
So let's wrap up. And I think, Isabel, you will be available here a few more minutes for people if they have questions or want
Yes,
to
10 more
discuss
minutes
with-
because then I have to go to railway station.
Okay. Audience, thank you so much for joining this session and for sharing your ideas and knowledge. And please, once again, a big applause for Isabel.
Thank you very much.
Isabel.